Hello to our Outfest audience. I am Lauren Holland. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm here with Caleb Johnson, writer and director of The Carnivores, which you've hopefully just watched on our Outfest digital festival platform. Caleb, congrats on your wonderful film.
Thank you very much. Nice talking to you.
You too, likewise. So The Carnivores was shot in Austin. Can you talk about this sort of left of center story in this left of center city?
Oh boy, opening it right up. I mean, uh, can you narrow that down at all?
Sure. It's very quirky. I would definitely say that the film itself is, has its quirks and, very unexpected sort of dream states, and, different narrative choices and all of that. And just in terms of Austin, I would love to just hear a little bit about the locations and, and that sort of thing.
Yes. So the locations are all within like a mile radius of my house, and the my mind goes to, when you ask the question between the connection between the quirkiness of the film and the quirkiness of the place. I think it has a lot to do with just the people involved, just because almost everyone except for Tally and Lindsay, the actors, were from Austin, and the spirit of that, I think, was just very much kind of like um, woven into the fabric of the film, in the sense that everyone involved was there from like a fairly early stage. And one of the nice things about working in Austin, as opposed to other places I've been, like New York and Chicago and bigger cities and industry cities, on a writ large, is just the fact that people are still charmed by the act of making films. And I mean that from a community perspective, as opposed to like in New York, just like the permitting process and wanting to shoot in any location. People are kind of like wise to the idea of like they can get something for that. And shooting in Austin felt like a creative process, not just for the crew and the actors, but also just like from a community sense. People were excited to see that it was happening and wanted to do things, not because they knew us, but just because like, why not? And also because I think there's a spirit in Austin that is just truly about, if something new is happening, if somebody's trying to create something, people generally want to help if they can.
That's amazing. I love the community nature of independent filmmaking. It makes a difference for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so a little bit in that vein, sort of how was the project originally conceived and what was the path to the feature?
Yeah. So my previous film was also with Tally Medell. It was called Joy Kevin, and when I was touring with that on the festival circuit, I met Adam Minnick, who's the director of photography on this film, and we had not known each other before, but we both live in Austin. We both have just like a ton in common, and it was probably just like 2 years of just like becoming friends and hanging out. And it was over the course of that relationship of just like realizing that, at least for me, I don't want to put words in Adam's mouth, but like very much just like I wanted to find a project for us to make. And this one had been kind of in the back of my mind already anyway. And then it was just a matter of timing that there was a window of opportunity we could do it, both from my perspective and from Adam's. And I called Tally, who I knew from the beginning I wanted to play the lead role, and she was interested. So it was kind of a slow burn, and then a very quick pulling of the trigger when the stars aligned logistically.
That's awesome. So the Carnivores highlights how people can get very intense about their relationship to their dogs and
Yeah.
also about their relationship to meat, um, frankly. And
Yeah.
sort of what does the interplay of these tendencies like reveal about Alice and Bret, and what drew you to those to these tendencies?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people are just in relationships can be just like really bad at knowing why they're in love with somebody else. Um, I think even if you try to put your finger on the things, like some of them may be true, but I'm not sure you're always getting to the bottom of like what it is about yourself and the other person that are making you um, a match. And I think that when something dramatic happens in your life, um, that whole kind of like equilibrium is thrown for a loop, and um, you kind of like reach for the easiest, safest thing that's there. And so that's what I was interested in exploring, or hoping to explore with their relationship, is that, for Bret, Lindsay's character, um, the dog being sick and going missing is like, for her, feels like part of her identity, and so like her reaction is to kind of like become obsessed about getting that back. And then for Tally's character, um, Alice, with Bret pulling away and the relationship feeling like it's not involving her anymore, she reaches for the most kind of like primitive sensibility of just kind of like sex, or the absence of it, or the kind of like subconscious equivalent of that in being something carnal and needy. um you know
Oh,
um so
I love that. Um, yeah, they are in their relationship. They are definitely so vulnerable and intentional about like addressing their intimacy issues. Um, and it definitely made me wonder why Alice kept her sort of sleep patterns a secret from Bret. And kind of in that vein, like, can you sort of talk about what you chose to show of their relationship?
yeah, um I think that the thing I was really interested with Alice is that, I read this. I'm stealing this line that I read in a book recently that like stood out to me because it captured what I was after, but I had never quite put it so concisely. And it was just like, um, the the author of this book writes, I that she realized that there was a difference between desiring something and wanting something.
Mm.
Um, and there are lots of different ways you can read that line, but to me, it was turning on this idea that like to want something is like this active, intentional thing. Um, but desire is way more complicated than that, in the sense that like you don't always get to choose what you desire, and sometimes that desire like finds you against your will. And for me, the reason Alice is being secretive about her stuff is because it frightens her, right? Like I don't think she is, especially as a vegan, for instance, like does not want to be desiring meat, and yet like is, and does not want to be kind of like turned on by the stuff that's turning her on, but it is, and I think because she hasn't processed that yet, she's trying to kind of like conceal it, hope that it goes away, or that if she figures it out, or that like she'll wake up and everything will be fine. And then she just kind of keeps digging the hole for herself deeper and deeper.
Ooh, yeah, and she continues to dig that hole very literally.
Right. Yeah.
And I definitely, because they were on these sort of parallel tracks, but like, had these sort of issues bumping up against each other. I wasn't quite sure that they were going to find their way back to each other, but of course they eventually did. So where do we meet them sort of in the arc of their relationship, right? Like they've obviously been together for a little while, but like, are they on the way to marriage? And what's that like in Austin? Like what are those?
Right.
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It's not explicitly spelled out what the status of the relationship is. I'd always viewed them as essentially married. You know, that they were like, that was the commitment level of their relationship. This was not a casual thing where one of them was going to pick up and be like, you know, without my dog, forget it. But we enter kind of like, the other thing that we had talked about from a very early stage of writing, myself, Lindsay, and Tally, was this idea of kind of like those long committed relationships are often this cycle of kind of death and rebirth, right? That like there's this initial phase where everything's great and exciting and whatever, but then there are inevitable like dips and peaks. So we definitely meet them at the beginning where like they're pretty far into the relationship, but like things aren't going well, and I don't think either of them really knows why, and neither of them is really addressing why. And it's, you know, it's the sickness of the dog, and then kind of like the Tally's overreaction to the dog that kind of like bring this all to a head in a way that they actually have to address like what it is about the relationship that is, you know, gone astray.
Wow. So Bret breaking the car window and then not finding Harvey, it feels like a moment that was truly intensified by the sound design.
Mm.
And I'm wondering, like, did she imagine the barking? And I also just wanted to know about the different sound design choices in this moment and also throughout the film.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear you ask about that, just because I mean a ton of work went into that, and I mean it's such a quiet film in so many other ways, like dialogue wise, it's just not very heavy. And then once the dog goes missing, of course, even that character is not on screen anymore either. So yeah, it's I mean, the reason I'm hesitating is because like I'm trying not to say the line that like the sound design like is trying to kind of like be a character of the film. But you know, fundamentally that's the way I was thinking about it. And I think that there's so many signposts there in terms of how we're supposed to understand the level of reality and psychological intensity of those moments, just from that part of the fabric of what they're experiencing. And then you had asked another part, which I feel like I'm forgetting. Oh, something about how Bret and breaking the window.
Yeah, I would love to. So did she imagine the barking, you know, or was it like in a different part, or were we supposed to go on that journey with her? Like, was she so crazy that she was imagining the barking type of thing?
Right. You
Or is that,
know, um, I think yes, but I feel like I'm saying yes to both questions in the
sure.
sense that like uh, I think that for both characters, I wanted there to be this dimension of out of bodiness that I was hoping to have the audience share with them, in the sense of kind of like, you know, usually like, you know, the whole kind of like dream versus reality thing can get pretty tedious in terms of like, and then they wake up and like everything you just saw was like a lie. And I wanted to keep that blurred to a certain degree, just because I think that the experience of like having that kind of an emotional reaction to something in real life, like even when that stuff does really happen, it like after the fact, like even a minute or a week later, it's kind of hard to believe that that was you doing that thing. And so I was just trying to kind of like walk that line as best I could in terms of like putting us in that emotional space with them, as opposed to always clearly delineating. And that thing that you just saw was like, you know, over here, and this is over here. So I'm gonna keep that a bit vague, I guess.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So I So I was going to ask a question about the ending and like what Alice, you know, imagines happened to Harvey.
Okay. Yeah.
And I understand if you want to keep that vague, but I guess what you clearly wanted us to get in Alice's head, but I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about like, you know, the burying of the meat, you know, the sort of the digging the hole and all of that. Like, what does Alice think happened to Harvey?
I think Alice is telling the truth at the end when she's confessing to Bret. I think that she ultimately gets to the place where, um, not that she remembers doing something to Harvey per se, but like is just like so um, past the line of like feeling like she's in control,
Mm.
that like the experience of the past few days leads her to believe that the only possible thing, like if it basically like if I'm in the backyard right now digging up ground beef that I buried and eating it, like what's the more realistic explanation, like, you know what I mean, in her head.
Mm.
So I think that she really believes that she did that. Yeah.
Wow. Um, and can you talk a little bit about the camera angles? Because I felt like, you know, there were a lot of shots of like Alice's feet, the ground, and you know, sort of also like the textures of the ground or the earth. Can you talk about that choice a bit?
Yeah, and that's something that Adam and I talked about a lot, and we experimented with a lot visually, in advance. But I think for me, um, that was kind of like an instinctual choice. But like after having gone through the shooting and working with the footage later, editing it, I mean, I think the place that came from is that on the surface, so many of these things seem small and mundane, and also because so many of them are psychological, the full weight of them aren't there on the surface. And so by putting the camera that close to um, the ground, but also like the details of the digging and things being cut and meat, all that kind of stuff, I think just I wanted to emphasize the degree to which things were out of normal proportion. And that also like when it wasn't just like, you know, she's digging a hole. It's like there's this hole and it's gritty and dirty and like a real hole where something really is supposed to be put in. You know, it just was meant to emphasize the gross reality, for that character. You know, to have minutia amplified, I guess.
So what do you hope for the future of the Carnivores, in light of our year, in light of the pandemic? Dare I ask, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, I think ultimately, I mean, from the beginning, I just wanted this to be something that people would see, as widely and possible as possible, and obviously the venues and timing of that has changed pretty dramatically. So, I think what's probably going to happen is that you know the festival landscape is going to continue to be very narrow, and like the moving on to kind of like distribution has gotten accelerated rapidly. And so I think that the distribution part will take over much sooner than expected, and that's going to be the way people see it initially. But I guess maybe this is just self-soothing, but I mean, every filmmaking team wants to have the opportunity to kind of like see stuff in theaters with an audience. And I guess in the back of my mind, I hold out hope that like down the road, even with official distribution, that like, you know, there'll be a time later when we can be in theaters, if not in an official way, then in just like select cities and places. Which is great. I mean, if that's what it ends up being, great. And if that doesn't happen, if people can find it, you know, online where it lives with the distributor, that's great too. But I've kind of accepted that at this point. Yeah, I just feel lucky that we were able to get it finished. And my heart really goes out to, of course, everybody who's stuck in the middle or without kind of like, I know so many projects that were just about to be made or on the precipice. And I think I think that would be a harder position for me to be in. So I feel pretty lucky that the film is done, frankly.
I hear you. And what's actually inspiring you right now in this time where we're all sort of slogging forward? What give us some light? What's up, Caleb?
Oh my God. I mean, for me, it is just like, if I look too far in advance, I get bogged down and a little bit grumpy. Plenty of things to be, as we all know. I just try to focus on, I mean, this feels kind of silly, but just like small, like I have 3 kids, and it's easy to focus on kind of just like, I don't think they have the larger perspective. They're quite small, and so the larger perspective to see those other things, and I can just kind of live in their world during the day. And so I try to do that, and hold out hope that that we could just kind of like move things in the right path while we have time to move them.
100%. I hear you. Well, do you have any sort of final thoughts for our Outfest audience?
No, I am so thrilled that you were able to watch and that I'm able to be here, sharing the film and then speaking to you. My information is pretty easy to find. If anybody's interested in reaching out further, I'm happy to engage with anyone about anything. So thanks for watching. I'm really excited to be able to share it.
That's awesome. That's so generous. Well, it was wonderful to connect with you, Caleb. And thank you so much for participating and sharing the Carnivores with us. And thanks also to our Outfest audience for joining us. And especially thanks to the staff, donors, and volunteers who are pulling off this really amazing feat of an all-digital festival. Take good care and be very safe, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
And then they can like cut down the video. So it was it was really nice to meet you.
Same to you.
And I hope those questions were okay. I didn't mean to like launch into like with a grenade, but like.
No, that's great. I'm so
cool.
glad that you did. Yeah, and I appreciate you staying up late after working all day to do it. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much. Thanks for letting me confirm 2 days in advance. It was.
Hey, I mean,
we got it.
However we get it done at this point, right? I mean,
100%.
Yeah. Do they have you doing several of these?
I'm doing 3. So I did the episodic showcase yesterday with about 11 people on the screen and 4 projects.
Oh my God.
Which was a lot. And then tomorrow I'll be doing the Q&A for a documentary, which I'm really excited about. And it'll be about 3 or 4 people.
Okay.
But 1 film. So less pressure on each person. So I really appreciate I appreciate your sticking with the questions and all that. So.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, I'm really glad you could do it. And yeah. So you're West Coast, obviously.
I am. I'm in LA. Oh okay. Gosh. So you're like late if you're based in Austin?
Yeah.
Thank you for being that. I guess it's
whatever. I mean, it's frankly, it's like the way my life works. Like it's either like before 6:30 or after 9. Like
yeah, before the kids or after the kids. Yes, yeah. Yeah. I believe it. Well, thanks so much, and take good care. And I wish you the best. I wish the best for the film and for navigating 3 kids in a pandemic.
Yeah, totally. And thanks for watching and asking such thoughtful questions. I really appreciate the thought you put into it. Appreciate it.
100%. All right. Take care, Caleb.
All right. Bye.
Bye.